Hi, and welcome to Death Blossoms, an all-female Overwatch community that hosts things like tourneys, contests, and what we like to call Death Blossoms University. This month's class focuses on the hero Mercy and was taught by EeveeA and SubLein. Make sure to check out their social media links in the description down below, and make sure to leave any questions in the comment section. Enjoy!
Alright guys, we're gonna start. So hi everyone, welcome to our Death Blossoms University Mercy class hosted by EeveeA and SubLein. Before we begin, I just want to ask you guys that you refrain from spamming your abilities or shooting your pistol unless it's asked for, just because with so many of us it could drown out what the instructors are trying to say and make it hard to hear. I'm also quickly going to be pulling us back to the lobby after 30 minutes just because it's going to kick us anyway if I don't. So we'll make some swaps if we get any late showers. But alright, I'm gonna start us up, and yeah, again, if Nubs, you could go. I think I said go Ryan, Xenar go Ryan, and Techno go Winston, just for the beginning.
Cool.
Okay.
Traveling to Numbani.
So as soon as we get to the point, Sub, you can take it away.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll be watching over you. Ha! 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 Enemy seen. Hello.
Oh man, I fell.
Damn, super low on that.
Ha!
Hello, everyone. Look at us.
Hi there.
We're so cute. Hello. We're all so pretty.
Okay.
I think we're all here.
Ready? Okay, so what kind of hero? This is Mercy class. What kind of character is she? She is a main healer, aka primary healer, and that is because her healing output is much higher than other supports. She does Zen does 30 per second, Mercy does 60. So her and Ana and sometimes Moira are considered primary. Why would you pick her if you want your team to stay alive and keep them going? She's always a good pick, especially right now with the current meta with the shields, because Ana can't get past the shield as easily. And why is she fun to play? I think personally for me, I like her because of her mobility. If you like moving around the map and going from teammate to teammate, she's the choice for you. And also those fun little reses you get off sometimes that change the battle. So depending on how you play her, she can be a lot of fun. I play her like a hummingbird, moving all over the time. Now let's talk about some of her abilities. Starting off with the healing beam. See this little yellow beam? You left click on your mouse and a little beam comes out, and with this you do the 60 healing per second.
I'm here.
Enemies detected.
And yeah, you have to have the target in your reticle, the little box, to be able to latch onto them. And I'm gonna let Evie take it off from there.
Yeah, so with that being said, there's a couple things that are unique to Mercy and her characteristics for how the beam functions. For example, Mercy beam can linger and stay on a target for up to 2 seconds when you do not have line of sight or are not in range of them. This is especially useful to keep corner peeking and continuing to heal a target, or say if you watch me while I fly past this Winston, I can go really quickly while getting free healing for 2 seconds on my Winston while being clearly out of range of him. Now with that being said, Mercy's healing is very, very good for healing over time and allows Mercy to outclass the other healers due to her consistent healing. That another characteristic, because of the other healers do not have this characteristics besides Zenyatta, being that it can heal through barriers.
Stay here.
Say if this Nubs brings up shield, I can still target this Winston through the barrier. Ana would not be able to do this, Zen can, Moira cannot do in a recent patch, and so on and so on. So with that being said, it is very important to keep in mind the pick that you choose and why you choose Mercy.
To show off some examples, we're going to have Winston doing damage to, let me see.
Hey.
Hi there.
Hello there.
Okay, so let's see. Tripid, can you damage Brit? And also, can we have Sparks? Can you heal Bumble? And we'll have Technomad do Pikachuing for her, damaging her. Okay, when I say go, Winston's attack. Go. Okay, so this here, you guys can see the your teammates' health bars. This you can see that Winston's healing is
Let me get you
exactly
patched up.
60. So Mercy, let's
Enemies
say you have a
detected.
Winston attacking your Zen. Mercy can heal while he is being attacked and keep teammates alive. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
Now, a little note that I'd like to add: if everybody can get around the Winstons.
Hello.
Now, something to keep in mind of when a Winston dives your team and a lot of people are low, oftentimes what I'll just do is just pop
Heroes
Valkyrie.
never die.
Because then the Winston, even though he damages multiple targets, will be unable to withstand the damage. So it's an if you know the Winston is diving onto
Enemy
2 or
seen.
more targets, that might be an interesting time to pop Valkyrie if you know you can then immediately kill the Winston via denying him his
Connection ongoing.
dive on your team.
Now, another thing we'd like to show too is based on prioritizing heals. Let's look at, so Reinhardt has shields, those little yellow things, right? Shields cause damage reduction.
Right?
Armor.
You okay? Oh, armor, sorry, yes. Yellow is armor, blue is shields. It does damage reduction. So let's say you have a Brig on your team or Reinhardt being attacked, right? And you have another person being attacked as well. Because of the armor reduction, let's see, I'm going to shoot Nubs. And can we have Bumble shoot Sparks? And also, let me see, Artie, can you shoot Xenar?
I can't shoot Sparks because Sparks is on my team.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I can try.
I mean, we could just have the Winston's damage Orion and a Mercy. And
Okay.
it's even.
Yeah, that works. Okay, so Trip, can you come over here and attack Nubs and Sparks?
On my team. I'll do Xenar and
Oh my God, my brain.
I'll do Xenar and Britness if you can stand next
Yeah.
to
And then, Techno, you do Sparks and Nubs.
So no healing on these.
Yeah. Alright, go ahead and attack them. You can see how the shields take longer to deplete.
Armor.
Armor. It takes longer to deplete. So that's another thing to keep in
Enemy
mind when
seen.
you're trying to keep everybody up. If your Brig has armor on her versus another like DPS like McCree, and they're both being attacked equally, maybe you want to prioritize the McCree over Brigitte for a quick second. Just something to keep in mind. Okay, so next we're gonna talk about next we're gonna talk about damage beam. So damage beam is similar in distance to the healing beam. It has 15 meters in total, and with this you right click and you do a 30% increase of damage that the person would already have done. Evie, you want to take it over for that one?
Yep. So with damage beam, it's important to keep in mind it is always available. You should always be looking for opportunities to be utilizing the damage beam. Not only does it allow your teammates to gain their ult charge quicker when they deal damage, an additional 30% to them, but as well as it allows you to gain your ult charge as well. The equivalent being that if you damage boost somebody that deals 120 damage, that additional 36 damage that you amplified is as if you did the damage, so that's how you can figure out how much ult charge you're getting. Now, there's no limit to this, so say if a Pharah barraged into an enemy team that's being grabbed and coalesced, you damage boosting that Pharah, you could get your entire Valkyrie in about 3 seconds. So it's something to keep in mind to always be looking for opportunities to gain free ult charge by your teammates doing their job. It's effectively mooching off of them doing their job. Now, with that being said, some comparisons being that Zenyatta's Discord Orb is also 30%, but that's received damage. The other boosting attributes for teammates would be Bongo from Orisa being 50% and Nano Boost also being 50% amplification. They all stack except ones of themselves, so such as Mercy's Beam will not stack with another Mercy Beam, however that doesn't really matter anymore. It's just something to keep in mind if you enjoy No Limits. With that being said, you can in fact then stack 130% additional damage boost from these characters, and then that would then also stack with Discord Orb. So But you should always be looking for times you can get free damage, secure additional kills, such as damage boosting a helix rocket from a soldier to secure a kill on a tracer, for instance. Now, there's a lot of different creative things you can do with damage boost from moment to moment. You should just always be trying to learn the different reasons why you should be damage boosting to secure additional kills. There's a lot of heroes in the game where it takes them 1 or 2 less bullets to secure a target kill because you damage boosted them, and that might be a reason to damage boost somebody with less than adequate aim, but that might make them more valuable to the team and secure their 1v1 kills if they end up going against somebody.
Now, for this, we're going to do a little example as well. But we need a soldier and a tracer, and I see Trip's already on tracer.
Hiya!
So, who are we going to assign soldier?
I'm just gonna go yeet.
You guys can switch back to Mercy. Off of Ryan and Winston.
We're all soldiers now. Hey.
I have a small question about damage boosting, but I'm not sure when
Enemy
it's best
seen.
time to ask.
We're swapping heroes. You can ask now.
Alright, so I was wondering, I find that off I will only damage boot at the very start, because otherwise she just dies. But I wonder if it's like, yeah, is that the right choice?
Can you repeat the question? You slightly got cut out.
Oh, sorry. I find that with if a Pharah barrages, I will only damage boost as at the very start, because I find that after that people will focus her, and then I will just heal her through her ult, even if she doesn't take damage, just because I'm scared that she will take damage and go down very fast.
I would
Is
say
that
it depends
the right
on
choice?
So there's a couple of ways to look at this. There is the part where damage boosting initially could allow the Pharah to secure the additional kills very quickly before the enemy team has time to react. But there's also the reason that, like you said, they'll start to look. Personally, I very often damage boost the first half second, then heal to figure out who's shooting the Pharah and whether or not I even need to heal the Pharah, as well as by that time, if the Pharah as your Pharah secures kills with barrage, that's less people shooting the Pharah, which then sometimes I then swap back to damage boost, which allows her to finish off the rest of the people that can't otherwise kill her fast enough. So it really depends on who's going to be shooting her. Sometimes I know an enemy Widow will secure the kill on this Pharah no matter what I do, so I just damage boost the entire barrage, knowing that no matter what I do, it's not really going to matter. She's going to die regardless, so we might as well try and get as much value from a barrage as quickly as possible, knowing that she's going to die. So oftentimes that'll secure an additional kill or two. It's really about determining what on the enemy team, where they're positioning, and figuring out whether or not it is worth to heal or damage boost, and that kind of game sense comes with time, but it is definitely something to keep in mind that neither is essentially a wrong option, just to keep an open mind and figuring out who all is going to be either on the enemy or your friendly, because as well as you don't know if your Ana has line of sight of your Pharah, maybe you don't need to heal as much, So just keep an open mind. Neither's really a wrong option.
Yeah, okay, that's helpful, thank you.
Okay, so another thing too, just for a heads up, we're gonna do a Q&A at the end because maybe some people have to leave. So we're gonna do a Q&A and go through all of your questions. So any further questions, just go ahead and write them down and keep a mental note, and we'll go through them thoroughly at the end of all of this. Okay?
Just a funny tip, just DM a friend randomly your question and see if they'll answer, but then you can check your chat for your own question for reference later. See what happens.
Right. Why are you messaging me about this?
Yeah. Anyway.
Aren't you the mercy main?
Yeah,
Right.
so what we're going to demonstrate right now with Tripid is just simply what I stated earlier, but a very quick example. So if I Helix Rocket Tripid direct, she can then just instantly recall. I don't have Helix available then due to cooldown, and then I would only have to be able to shoot. Now, with that being said, if I am then damage boosted, I can one-shot the Tracer. So it is a very useful tool to quickly damage boost and know who on your who on your team has what cooldowns available. So keep in mind, so if my soldier hasn't helixed recently, I'll be looking for when he's going to be helixing. And even if he's already shot his helix, because damage boost is dealt at the time the damage is dealt to the enemy, your soldier could helix, and then you could look at him and damage boost him, and it would still be amplified damage if you're damage boosting him as the target is receiving the damage from the helix rocket. So it's never really too late to damage boost a target unless they've already received the damage. So that's a couple little tips all in a row. So very often that tip applies to if a soldier is like kind of shooting like their McCree, and then it looks up and helixes their Widow. Notice how long it took that rocket to hit the destination? That's a lot of time for you to then damage boost. So you have a pretty good window, depending on the range.
Okay, so next we're gonna go into another one of Mercy's abilities called Guardian Angel, and that is the shift key normally. So basically it's the same when you're healing, you have your target. Oh, sorry, I'll wait for you, Evie.
No, what? No, continue.
Okay. So you have your target in sight, and this you just press shift to go to them. Right? It is a 30-meter range, and that helps Mercy's mobility and survivability as well. So using it is very important with keeping yourself alive, and also getting to your teammates, which is why it's important to keep your team in sight at all times.
Yeah, so going from that, it's absolutely critical to always be monitoring who all you'll have a line of sight to, not only to potentially fly to them and heal them, but as well as your potential getaway targets. Say for Numbani, for example, if your team is holding the back high ground, I often tell another teammate to position this high ground, say if the enemy team is going streets. This makes it to where if the enemy team wants to go for what they perceive as a free kill over here, you can then fly back to your team on the opposite end. But if they then go to the majority of your teammate on this side has free reign over the enemy team's position. So it's very often key to keep in mind where you want to position via what teammate, knowing where the enemy team wants to go and their positioning. So Guardian Angel always being on a 2-second cooldown should always be looking for an opportunity to take advantage off of that. There's a few characteristics to keep in mind as well. Regardless of your settings, you should be able to say, for example, this seems super basic, but getting into the mindset and muscle memory of this is super important and will save people over the time of you playing Mercy. So say if I hold or click Guardian Angel, depending on your settings, you could then hold your beam and it instantly attaches at the time they're in range. That either would be from you going around a corner, getting in range, and I'll even occasionally, another example of when I'll pop Valkyrie, sometimes they're coming from spawn, or I'm just way too far away and somebody's really out of position, but I can't immediately Guardian Angel or beam them to save them in time because of my range. So sometimes it might be worth it to Valk and instantly be able to beam them, even if they're out of range. Sometimes keeping that one person alive is that critical and worth your ultimate due to how fast you'll get it now that you're going to be damage boosting more often to get your ultimate quicker. Now with that being said, there's a couple quirks with Mercy's Guardian Angel that are very important to start learning over time, and it is what it will separate you from a lower tier Mercy or a higher tier Mercy. Now that being a couple different ways to use one key function. Holding jump while Guardian Angeling. Now, you can boost yourself up in the air if someone is at a higher altitude than you, or at any higher altitude and with good timing. So if somebody's on the payload, pretty much any payload on any map, you can launch yourself up into the air and get high ground. It is very key that you learn this so that you're less dependent on your teammates to get the advantage in an upcoming engagement. Say if you just won the initial fight in the streets phase, where you then want to get a good position, you wasting time by going around and going upstairs, while it might seem fine in some cases, you don't know when the enemy team is going to engage, so cutting back on those seconds where you otherwise would be useless to your team by not being there is important. So, if Sub can keep standing here, you can pretty much launch yourself and get up to this high ground. I want all of you to try and do this, please. So it seems like Bumblebee and Sub will stay on the payload. So each of you will be able to give this a try.
Oh.
Kind of, it seems stupid, but kind of make a line. You will bump into each of your teammates.
What helps me with it, it's very much timing. But when you get close to me, press the space bar. For me, that helps. And it's like jumping off my face and getting high ground.
If
a good
some
way
of
of
you
putting
have played Widow, this is kind of similar to jumping towards the end of your hook to get a little boost. So what this is, to be clear, is you holding spacebar during the Guardian Angel. Either use toggle and you hold spacebar at the end of it, and then you'll get the boost, or you hold Guardian Angel and during the end of it, when you reach and get closer to your teammate, you'll then space before you get to them. All of this ability is really based around timing and altitude. There's a little bit of dead zone with Mercy's Guardian Angel, so the closer you are to the target, you might not even be able to target them. Now, what might be helpful, just to look where I'm positioning, if everybody is, whoever's struggling with it, look at me real quick. So what you do is you get to a distance where the reticle is like disappeared right here. But if you just back up a little bit, and then you can boost. So you can initiate your Guardian Angel, and pretty much immediately hold space. Now see? There you go. A couple more of you are getting it. Yep, there you go. There you go. Now, for the ones who have completed it, can you come stand up here and stay up here? I want everybody to have completed it a couple times.
Greetings.
Keep in mind you block the enemy teammate Mercy. Well, the enemy Mercies from doing so.
It's
now,
very
Tech,
much.
you can do it from different angles as well.
I'm with you.
Hey.
Nice.
There you go. So, has everybody done it at least once or twice? Alright. So, learning how to utilize this ability is very key to then getting in different places in the map. Now, this one's a little bit trickier, and I haven't practiced this one in this specific point in this map, but something to keep in mind is possible is that getting to different positions and different high grounds based off of where a teammate is. So say, actually, Sub, can you come to right here? Now, if you look at this,
Ich bin da.
which I jump. Can you jump?
Oh.
Now, sometimes just a random jumping teammate can get you the high ground you need. So looking out for teammates and being ready to utilize it is super important. Now,
Your support has
I keep
arrived.
messing it up. It's best done on Anubis, which we'll go to later. So I'll have to come back to that one specific trick. But basically, if you immediately spacebar as you are going towards the target, you can then go to a different ground and get a significant boost. Anyway, another thing is this tip isn't exclusive to getting altitude. Really what you need to be doing is always using this. So watch how fast I go to Techno here. So that was holding Guardian Angel, first off. But then, so one, I don't need him or anybody else to get back to this high ground because I jump back and then Guardian Angeled up to get the advantage. But now watch this one if I hold space towards the middle of it. Notice how quicker that was? Because of using the hold to spacebar, it is a free boost in Guardian Angel speed to get to a target quicker. So holding boost, like, pretty much around the 60% point to your target allows you to get some free speed to your target.
You can use me as a
Enemy
target.
seen.
Now, for those, you can practice not only the just quickly speed boost to the target, but for those of you who want to practice jumping backwards and flying to a teammate, to then boost all the way back here without flying to a teammate.
I've got you.
One of us needs to jump here. One of
I
us
feel
blues.
powerful.
There we go, I'll get over there. Okay, there you go. So if you want to boost to me, so boost around this point.
Ich bin da.
So by holding space towards the end of the duration of Guardian Angel allows you to get a free boost, and you should pretty much always utilize this to get some free speed. Now, there's a couple things to keep in mind, and this is where we'll go back
Enemy
into a little bit
seen.
more depth. This is kind of casual. You should always be doing this. You should always be looking to get a free boost, as well as this ends the cooldown of your Guardian Angel ever so slightly quicker. So, if everybody can go and press Escape, go to your options, go to Controls, click on All Heroes, and scroll down to Mercy. Now, something a lot of people do not know is Mercy is the hero with the most amount of hero-specific settings in the entire game. Now, with that being said, as some of you might guess, this is also meaning that she is the hero with the most amount of settings that determines your playstyle on Mercy. Now, default settings are fine, and especially if you know what they do and why you use them that way.
Enemy
But if you
seen.
do not know how to utilize the default settings for a specific reason, you are basically better off setting settings to non-default. These settings are generally much kinder to Mercies that are learning Mercy. The one thing I'll note though is hold the Guardian Angel. If you're using your pinky finger, regardless of your settings, probably find a button to rebind Guardian Angel to. It's a lot more encouraging to use Guardian Angel much more often if your pinky finger isn't hurting because of it. So if you have a mouse button for your thumb, I highly recommend that, but test out what works for you regarding the settings and your keybinds to make Mercy a much more enjoyable experience for you to play. These settings will determine your playstyle in general. So, for example, if you already prefer beam target, which means that you'll fly to someone you have your beam connected to rather than otherwise, you need to make sure that you know why you utilize that ability, and if it's worth the trade-off to always being at effectively a ever so slight disadvantage, and getting over that disadvantage is part of the skill of utilizing that setting. A player such as Aspen uses pretty much default settings and is godlike at them, but that comes with a lot of practice. Personally speaking, I recommend all non-defaults because I personally believe that it is settings that are much more beneficial to people who are less experienced at Mercy or want a more comfortable time playing her. Where if you use preferred beam target, you'll constantly need to be detaching your beam and flying to the target you would like to go to, rather than if everybody can test out non-defaults for just a couple seconds here. It is a much better time to then be able to holding your beam on a target and flying to other targets. This allows you to, if somebody's getting really focused, you don't feel like you need to detach your beam to still move around. Notice how I'm just flying around at these different targets while never detaching my beam from the initial person. That gives you a lot of additional healing over time, and it's something you need to look into, and if you're comfortable with using it.
Sorry, I just need to restart the match real quick so it doesn't kick us all.
Yep.
Traveling to Numbani.
Now, that's pretty much most of Mercy settings. There's one last one to cover really quickly, and then we'll head over to the next ability.
Helden sterben nicht. Helden sterben nicht.
Now, again, try not to constantly pop Valkyrie. It would be greatly appreciated. Now, the last two settings that a lot of you probably have questions about regarding beam sensitivity and Guardian Angel sensitivity. What these two settings are is how accurate you have to be to aim your reticle on your target that you would like to heal or fly to, or rather attach your beam to. Now, this means that if you notice and look at a target to beam, how far away from them you can aim and still be aiming at the target. If a red Mercy can jump over here. Actually, I can also show this real quick. Since none of the red Mercies are over here, I can quickly show this. You can jump to this high ground from that spot, so without needing your Guardian Angel target. There you go. Yeah, so now red Mercies are over here. So if a couple reds can stay over here, and okay, so and then now if you aim to like the far side of one of the Mercies, notice how you don't have to be that accurate at all for the reticle to appear. Now, the lower the beam sensitivity settings, the less accurate. The lower the beam setting, the more accurate you have to be on that person. But that brings the advantage of tight team fights that where sometimes pretty much all of you have probably had the experience where you're getting frustrated and you can't attach the beam to the right person. Lowering that setting allows you to find and select your target much easier. From example, I personally use 90 and 85. But yes, find what you personally prefer over those two settings, and you'll probably have a much more enjoyable time selecting your target. Now, for the next section is Resurrect. Sub, take it away.
Yep. Okay, so
Hello.
Resurrect. This is where if somebody dies on your team, you can bring them back. It is normally bound to E, unless you change the settings. It has a 30-second cooldown, so it takes time, but it's worth it. Casting speed is 1.75 seconds, and in that time, you are vulnerable and you can move very, very slowly. Movement speed is 1.375 meters per second. You're slowed. There is a 5-meter range also on targets, so you can res somebody from 5 meters away in total. And then, yeah, I'll let Evie take the rest from that.
Yep. So there's a couple things to say at pretty much every single point listed. So if a red Mercy can kill Zyna right here, that would be appreciated. So say if they are attacking that side, you can res and fall back in cover and still secure the res and then fly back up to that person. It is very often for that to happen from, say, a sniper picking off a teammate. But then you feel like it's not a safe res. You do not need line of sight to res a person after initiating the res. This not only means that you can fall in cover in certain areas of the maps. If we can come over here, depending on the map, you could potentially get away with a res entirely by, say, if a teammate dies right here, like a Reinhardt got pinned against like this, right? So somebody can kill Zynar again. I'm so sorry.
Oh.
You can be on the ground and not have to worry
fight.
about Angelic descending
So
down to the
that's what it
ground
feels
to be
like.
slowly falling in cover. You can completely just fall to the ground. There are many maps where this is applicable, such as the bridge in Anubis A, where the crosses the two sections. You could fall to the ground there. Finding out the areas of the maps where you can be on the ground and feel and be completely safe while rezzing is very key to learn and figure out. So if somebody wants to then kill me and then resurrect me while falling to the ground, they can do so. Yep, so it's very important to learn where to do this based off of where the enemy team is to keep doing cheeky reses to be safe. This will heavily impact how many reses you are able to get off. Sometimes even breaking this will allow me to get like an additional half an inch and be safer, so if somebody kills Brit. F. And say if they're coming up these stairs, you could take this angle. That cuts off over half the corridor for them shooting you, or in the opposite angle where you can just come around. So Brit, can you stand here? And yep. So then you can completely be in cover.
This is not your time.
And still get off the res.
So that's what it feels like.
Figuring out where a teammate, if they randomly die, being in position to quickly get a quick res off will heavily impact not only bringing them back in the fight quickly, potentially allowing them to kill the person who killed them because they might be reloading, and it makes it to where that you're already having your res on cooldown versus the effect of indecisive rezzing will cause you to res less over time because you wasted 4, 5, 6 seconds before deciding to res, where that will then cause a situation where you won't have res as soon. Now there's the opposite to that, because a lot of good players will camp bodies to make sure that a res does not happen, but sometimes they stop looking around the 8 and 9 second mark. That can be your chance to res sometimes because they feel like nobody's going to be there. So keep that in mind. There's a bit of a mind game for both your friendlies and enemies to secure reses. Now, with all that being said, heck, there was another thing I needed to mention. Oh, yeah. So, a super basic thing, but one of the last things we'll mention regarding Resurrect is, unfortunately, it is the literal only cooldown in the game that persists through respawn. Now, knowing that and keeping that in mind is really important. So, if you think that if a fight is pretty much almost lost, just literally clicking res on a teammate when a fight is lost is instantly putting you at a disadvantage for the next fight, and if the enemy team is paying attention enough, they'll know that a pick in the next fight means that you won't have res because you wasted at the end of the previous engagement. So keep that in mind, that res never resets in any circumstances besides the cooldown. Now, a couple scholars among you might say that, like say, Symmetra recharging her turrets is a cooldown. It's not, it's a regenerating ability. Anyway, moving on. So, with the next section is Valkyrie.
Actually, there's a couple more things about res I wanted to go over, because we do have an example as well. And one thing I forgot to mention was there is a distance. So to keep in mind when you're resing, if it's on ground, because the movement is so slow, you're usually safe from this. But when you're valking or if you're falling, if you go too far away from your targets, that's when you lose it, and that's why we do the glide down. But we do have an example of how you can get some of those cheeky reses that we'll have some people do on payload.
Oh, right, yep. So, if we can have a couple people, like, standing here, maybe, on the edge of this. Yep. So, someone come kill Bumblebee. It has to be done. So then, you can res, and then walk pretty much around the payload. Somebody res her, please. Right.
Enemies reviving.
Sub,
Enemy seen.
it has to be done.
Yeah. It's okay.
Okay, so keeping in mind the distance to be able to res, you can initiate a res like this, and then be completely in cover behind the payload as you complete the resurrect.
So
Now, you could even do something along the lines of...
Hello.
Okay.
Now, keeping in mind that regardless of the angle you come off the payload, getting any angle reduction from an enemy teammate, an enemy player, means that you are more likely to live via that resurrect. Again, keeping in mind the things that could be potentially in the way from an enemy player will greatly increase the amount of times you get off a resurrect. Something cheeky I might add, which I will do right now, is sometimes you can stand on top of an enemy player and get off a res. By the time they realize you're literally on top of them, you'll already have completed the res and flying away. So very often that happens in brawl comps. So where they kill a teammate that they're aggressing on, if you can launch off of a teammate and get that potential res off, you can then say, I've had it to where I've res my Reinhardt behind them, because they killed my Ryan and then quickly went in, where then because they didn't expect a Mercy resing Reinhardt behind them, he gets an Earth Shatter. So looking for those key opportunities to make res work for your team is super important. Now, there's just a lot of little tricks you can do. This is just the one of many. I think the last one I'll mention, but is super, like, questionable. If a sub, can we sacrifice you again?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So, you'll often see this trick. Now,
This is not the end.
someone can argue
So
it's
that's
factually
what it
harder to
feels
kill the
like.
Mercy, blah, 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 blah. I personally am not very encouraging of that mindset.
Enemy seen.
It's, for a lot of hit scan sniper players, i.e. Widow players, they say it's much more difficult. But oftentimes it's kind of like a 50-50 chance whether or not they'll secure the kill, even probably more likely than that. The actual method you should be using, if everybody can picture in your mind what resing somebody looks like, what you should actually be doing is doing this. So say if somebody's down there, down range, looking at you, and you want to get off a res desperately, raise your hand up like this, and your hand's hitbox being raised covers up your head critical hitbox. And it makes it much more likely that you will get off the resurrect because they cannot secure headshots on you. If you know exactly where they're coming from, that is the preferred method over just spinning like randomly. So keep that in mind, look for opportunities to use that. But with that being said, I think res is covered.
Okay, so moving on to Valkyrie, the alts. So what it does, it doubles your beam range. So it's much longer, it goes 30 meters per se, and it increases speed and allows free fly. I'm gonna demonstrate the range. Hold on, 1 second. Okay, let's say I'm coming from spawn.
Heroes never die.
And I want to get to my team, so the movement is much faster and further, right? It basically enhances all of Mercy's features. So your beam is also much further with that as well. One thing to keep in mind too is while the beam will latch onto somebody at 15 meters, and that's the same with when you're valking, sometimes you can go further. There's a 2-second grace period, but you won't be able to hook back on. But I'll let Evie take the rest in terms of valking.
Alright, well, if you look down streets, initial streets, there's a lot of different reasons to Valkyrie. Now, if my team can back up to the back of the point, notice how if the enemy team is in their streets phase from their spawn, this means that I could be over here valking and be healing my entire team while they're behind the payload. So looking for cheeky opportunities like this, as well as calling out to your team to use a specific piece of cover while giving you the opportunity to heal them all while they're in cover, is super important and brings an entire duration of 15 seconds where it's uncontested healing to your entire team. So you can win a lot of fights off of that and potentially matches. With that being said, like Sub said, Valkyrie enhances all of Mercy's abilities. All of them except Resurrect. If you notice when you Valkyrie, which you can all do so if you would like, you not only have an immense beam range, but as well as Guardian Angel range. Now, Mercy also has a passive ability under the name of Angelic Descent that is also her auto-regenerating health. Now, Mercy is the only hero with auto-regenerating health except heroes with shields. Shields auto-regenerate at 20 healing per second, as well as Mercy's passive health regen is also 20 healing per second after not receiving damage for 1 second. That 1 second is super critical to get a lot of free healing on yourself to quickly get back into the fight. That's why Mercy is one of the best primary healers as well, is she doesn't need to focus on healing herself. Such as other supports that need to use their cooldowns or need to wait for their shields to regen, etc, etc. Mercy is the true independent healer that doesn't need no man. Anyway. So with that being said, Valkyrie makes it to where she's permanently regenerating at 20 healing per second. So keeping that in mind is really nice depending on the target that's shooting you and at what range. Now, if you'll notice, some of you that are in Masters and above going against divas in previous metas, they might notice that divas shoot at them from really far ranges. And they're like, what are you doing, diva? But in reality, they're making it to where as long as they get a pellet that does 0.3 damage to you per second, that means you're never regenerating health. When you play Mercy for so long, you get really, really careless regarding assuming that you're going to be regenerating health, and you don't even really realize it most of the time. So having a diva deny that passive ability really changes it up and makes you need to really play differently. So keeping that in mind, depending on the target, popping Valkyrie might save you. Knowing when to pop Valkyrie and not waste it is super important. So sometimes if I am armored, I'll use Valkyrie to then know that I'm not going to receive a burst of damage to immediately die, such as Tracer is dealing half damage to the armor, etc. So if you're below 50 health, it's pretty much always a guarantee that you shouldn't be valking unless you're in cover or the person that was otherwise shooting you was just killed. So moving on from that, it is very important to keep in mind and not be stubborn to just swap targets during Valkyrie. Just because you're healing a bunch of people at once doesn't mean it might be more ideal to swap to the other side of the people that's healing based off of where that person's moving. A person that's off to the side that you have your beam on and quickly moves out of range could be an additional 1.5 seconds where you don't realize and you potentially have lost out on healing on a person that needed it. Always, don't get in the wrong mindset to where you just lazily use your beam in Valkyrie. Like non-using Valkyrie, always be paying attention to who you need to be putting your beam on next to effectively prioritize that target and ensure that they are always getting healing. Now, Valkyrie does not, however, increase the amount of healing she does, and it does not increase the amount of damage she amplifies. It just, however, means that it chains to multiple targets at the same rate. So a person getting the secondary beam is still getting the same amount of healing as a person getting the first beam.
Enemy seen.
So, keeping that all in mind, when do you use Valkyrie? Now, there's a lot of different opinions on when you need to use Valkyrie, and some are more right than others. But the important thing to keep in mind is that no Valkyrie is completely useless most of the time. You can pretty much always find value from Valkyrie, and knowing what value you're bringing with Valkyrie is important to not feel like your Valk was wasted, which is very often the feeling that Mercies have since previous versions of Valkyrie. Just keeping in mind that if your team is fully healed and you're engaging and you're going and the team knows what target they're going for, Valkyrieing in with a damage boost on your entire team is very key to secure kills very quickly, and also could be on the tail end of a fight used say for 2 CP to clean up. There's multiple different uses for it. You need to be a little bit creative to figure out and decide for yourself what you see as the most valuable way to use Valkyrie. But generally speaking, as long as multiple people benefit from your Valkyrie and you win the fight because of it, it wasn't a wasted Valk.
Okay. Are we ready to talk about the Caduceus Blaster?
Yay, favorite topic.
In general, one thing I want to note before is, as Mercy, you should always be doing something. And usually that's healing or damage boosting. Even if your team has won a fight,
Enemy seen.
you can damage boost a Widow. So I'm doing that as a little heads up. A Widow can get a secure kill before the next fight starts. Is always good. But you do have a gun.
So that's
And with it, so it does 20 damage per shot. You can do headshots. You can, if you shoot off, and then put it away, switch to your weapon, or your staff, and then go back to your gun. Give it 2 seconds, it reloads. So you don't have to keep shooting and then reload. You can just shoot a little bit and then go back to healing, and then shoot again if you need to. Another thing to keep in mind too is there is no fall off damage, so distance-wise doesn't matter. And also it is continuous. It's a there's no drop. So where your reticle is, no matter how far it shoots, it's going to hit where the reticle is. And I'll let Evie talk about the rest.
I feel
Yep, so like Soap said, it automatically reloads when the staff is out. So there's pretty much never, ever a reason you should be pulling out your pistol and using your reload key. Pretty much you can unbind that thing. It's very important to keep in mind that every time you run out of ammo is effectively the time you need to realize, oh crap, what have I been doing? And look around to reassessing the situation and resume doing your job as Mercy. It's not your job to deal damage. It's occasionally your job to kill Widow because nobody else does. Besides that, you should really be focusing on what you can be doing as Mercy at all times. This ties very tightly into how I personally climbed very quickly in the early days of Season 2. Personally, I just made myself realize every second that I'm doing something is more value to my team. Every second I'm using my pistol or dead is seconds not helping my team. As simple as that is, that not only helped me pay attention more to my positioning, what can make me die less, as well as constantly ensuring that there's less dead time where it's like, oh, gotta go around the corner. No, figure out if like say I need to heal sub. Do I wait for sub, or do I fly up and look at her when she's in cover? Like, consider your teammates' rally points. Like, use them to your advantage to get and reduce time that otherwise you couldn't see a teammate to heal them. Like, pretty much, it's kind of a game of connect the dots. Figuring out the fastest way to connect the last dot is really what you need to be doing with your Guardian Angel and healing. That ties into utilizing your pistol less and not making sure that there's less dead time in doing so. So, with all that being said, just make sure you don't turn off your brain and tunnel vision when you have your pistol out. It happens to literally all of us. It is very important to keep in mind that what your job as Mercy is, and to keep doing it. It is very likely not your job to pull out your pistol. Even in self-defense, sometimes trying to bait them and pull them back further allows your team to not have that person in that fight, and so they can win the fight. So, etc., etc. There's just pretty much always times where you do not need to have your pistol out. Now, some of you can contest me that that there is a couple times you can pull out your pistol. You can make it work, but it is best to deprioritize that to focus on learning other parts of Mercy's kit to get better at those. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, we always have that. Everything, all of us have had that moment where we're Valking and we just get tunnel vision, and then we realize our entire team's dead. So that's not what you want to happen. You want to keep them healed. You want to keep everybody alive. The idea is keep the school trip alive, guys. That's what we're doing here. So one thing I want to talk about is counters. If you look online and you look up Mercy and you try and find her counters, it is everything. Everything counters Mercy. Now that's just because of what she does. She does healing, so anything that does damage is a counter to her. Now there are things to look out for in dives. And dives tend to go for the backline. They're not as meta currently, so you don't see them as often, but Genjis and Winstons will come for you. Usually you can get away, but your other healer might not be able to. And it's important to keep that in mind, to keep your other healer alive as well. They're just as important. Now, next is sensitivity. Depending on your own preferences, the only thing I would say, go into quick play, go into a custom, and look at if you are able to keep your team, be able to glance around and see them and move around. Because I've seen people with sense that's so low that it's really hard for them to get a bearing of where they are and where their team is. So just keep in mind of sensitivity, and I know Evie has something to say about this too, so I'll let her go ahead and say it. Go ahead.
I mean, generally, Sub covered everything that needed to be said overall regarding sensitivity, but just keep in mind that if it's so low that you feel like you lose somebody because you couldn't turn around fast enough to heal them, that's potentially a time to look at and assess whether or not you need to turn up or down your sensitivity, as well as making sure that you never really get to a sensitivity that makes it to where either you're less comfortable on damage overall, or that you have to resort to 2 sensitivities. Some people can get away with 2 sensitivities. I just personally heavily discourage it. I did it personally for a year and a half, and as soon as I swapped from doing so and found a happy medium, I was able to improve immensely as a player very quickly because of that. But finding out what works for you is very important. Just either basically go into custom range, but I actually encourage versus AI, because at least you have human players to bounce between, figure out what you need to do, and what's comfortable to fly around quickly and look at your next target. Another very, very small thing to mention, but just some people don't think about it, is that, say, if everybody, even the people off in the bleachers, look over at me,
Join me.
if you notice that I can fly and immediately be looking back at my target, so it's important to keep in mind that you can turn around during Guardian Angel at any point. That's time where you could otherwise be looking at not only absorbing more information to then potentially call out or know where you need a position, but as well as that could be the time that you need to look at the next person you're going to fly to. Because while you, let's say, launch up right here, and then while you're angelic dissenting, be like, all right, well, that person I'm gonna go to, and then you're be like, oh, I'm going back over here, you know, etc., etc. You can always be looking at what next target you're gonna be healing or flying to cut down that time where you're not doing anything. It's all about cutting down time you're not doing anything as Mercy to bring more value to you as a player. And that's pretty much it regarding almost everything.
I'm just gonna restart real quick again.
So if we're ready, Evie, do you want to do Q&A with everybody once we get there? Okay, we'll do Q&A.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is the time too, if any of you are time constrained, if you have to like go and do something, because I know this was scheduled for an hour, feel free to do so, and the rest of you, we will go through all of your questions and answer as clearly as we can.
Yep, and a couple things. If you need to go, but you want to post a question, you can post it in the events chat. You can post it in the Twitch channels chat for Death Blossoms. And this will be streamed again tonight, as well as the VOD will be on the Death Blossoms channel, available to be viewed if that setting is enabled. So you really have no reason to miss the questions if you can, well, if you can't be here. But yep, so with that being said, who would like to go first?
I've got you.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Go on, Nubs. You go first.
Okay. So the first thing I learned today is whenever you were talking about Soldier's Helix rocket, and you shot back there, and you mentioned that you have some time to damage boost him before the Helix rocket hits. So I didn't realize that if he shoots it but you damage boost after, it will still apply that damage boost. Is that right?
Yes. So the way to think about it overall is a good example being Dragon Strike. You don't damage boost him when he shoots the arrow. You damage boost him as it's being applied to the damage, say, the people in the graviton, and you need to keep damage boosting him over the course of the people being damaged. So, keeping that in mind is very important to bring value to damage boost, such as even in this meta as well, keeping in mind that damage boosting the entire dragon and grav is also usually probably 20% of your ultimate if you don't already have it. So a lot of random things to think about there. But yep, damage boosting over the course of the damage being applied or at the time it's applied.
Hello there.
Okay. And I was wondering, are there other characters that maybe their damage is seemingly separate from the hero, but if you damage boost them, it still applies to their damage? Like, for example, does damage boosting a Torb boost his turret?
Okay, so this is a very good question. I'm kind of mad at myself I didn't say this earlier because I have such a succinct way to say this because I get to ask this so many times. It is literally that if it's in the game, it does damage, it's not a turret, and it's not a Junkrat tire, it can be damage boosted. Literally think of anything that does damage and it's not a turret or a Junkrat tire, then it can be damage boosted.
Okay.
Like Moira, if you damage boost her when she sends an orb out, you can see the damage in the crosshairs.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Now, actually, I had to do some science to figure out the Moira orb, if you'll allow me to go on a tiny tangent. The Moira orb for her damage orb doesn't actually make the orb do damage in total. The orb has a 200 damage cap, meaning that if you damage boost the Moira, it depletes the orb quicker. You get ult charge, but that doesn't make the Moira get more ult charge or the orb do more damage over the course of the whole orb. The reason to damage boost an orb would be that if you want ult charge, or that if you think the person's going to be moving out of the orb on the enemy team, so damage boosting it might allow the orb to do more damage over the course of the orb before they move out of the way.
Next question?
Can I go?
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm a mid-masters tank main, so these might be stupid. So I apologize in advance. If you swap in between, say, two CP points, so if you were wiped on point 1,
Greetings.
very quickly, if you swap, would the risk cooldown still persist, or would it come back, like D.Va regaining her mech if she swapped heroes?
It does in fact come back, and it is an exploit. I don't think it's a bannable exploit, but Jeff Goodman himself said to me he doesn't believe that's an exploit that could be perceivably exploited efficiently enough to be worth patching. So it is still currently in the game. I don't believe you'd get banned for that. I wouldn't.
Because I know a lot of D.Va players will, instead of dying if they have like 0 ult charge, they'll just use the hero swap to remake. So I was wondering if you could actually gain the advantage if you had a really low ult charge of resetting yourself and regaining the res cooldown.
I'm here.
Yep, you can absolutely do that.
Does self-healing count towards your ult charge?
No, but it does count towards your total healing stat.
Yeah, I knew that. Do you often ask people to taxi you when you get fast spawns or staggered spawns?
You should always be doing that. That saves up to... It's effectively the time that could be saved by you being able to fly to a teammate. Think of that time saved as if saving an entire death's worth of time. They could save you 10 seconds getting back to the fight. So it's very important to always mention that. It goes back to, if possible, to coordinate that. That's less time you not doing anything.
Yeah, I have about a quarter of the Mercy players asking, but I thought it would be worth mentioning because I think it's very necessary, and I often on tank just like quickly jump out or charge back, so I can give some assistance on coming back faster.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. That's everything from me.
Now, something super random that I'll just note is never underestimate your passive heal. On the whole note that it is a tracked healing stat, you can go to your career profile, click on Mercy, and you might want to do, say, all competitive seasons. You can scroll down and find your self-healing stats, which let me find how far down it is. I'm pretty sure it's pretty low.
It's in the third row from the bottom, on the right side.
Yeah, so self-healing and self-healing per 10 minutes, and then self-healing most in a game. You could like select all competitive seasons, by the way. So for example, in one game, I've self-healed 4,500 healing from just passively regenerating health. It is nothing to scoff at, and it is something immensely valuable to be keeping in mind.
Another thing I would say, just because you're a tank, it brought up the idea. Winston, if you have a Winston on your team, and let's say you're jumping to point and you're having trouble surviving, I sometimes yell, "Jump, Winston," because it can give you that air, especially with the boost. It can get you up in the air for that couple of seconds to keep you alive and help your team. So
yeah, I have been asked
D.Va,
to do that on both D.Va and Winston. Just like randomly jump up into the air to give height.
Yeah, that saves. I mean, I can't tell you how many times that saved my own life while playing Mercy, and probably the team.
Do you do that very much at all, Evie, or?
I do it a lot less because the higher you go, the more likely you being up in the air is just a free target to shoot at.
I'm with you.
But depending on the map, it's really good.
Yeah, because it can just increase the LOS to you, and good widows will exploit that.
That's also, if you do that, if you do think you're going to be shot at, say, for example,
I've got you.
If I launch off of sub here, say if you're in the air, always stagger your descent to like kind of juke shots and use it as a skilled ability to then use to dodge, because that little jerk of motion can often save you a headshot.
I'm with you.
Can I actually ask one more? I've just thought of something.
Yeah.
When you're flying, do you often try and turn yourself so your head hitbox is either backwards or away from any enemy heroes to reduce any incoming damage?
I don't personally do it pretty much at all, but it is definitely something you can keep in mind if you're willing to include that into your gameplay.
Okay, thank you.
Next question?
If I could add something to that, make sure that if you GA and you turn around, you might change direction if you've already pressed space.
Huh?
Well, like when you said like turn around in the air, like if you GA over, press spacebar halfway through, but then you angle your camera differently, you will go that direction.
Oh yeah, so okay, yeah. You can curve the where you go after holding space. So holding space in Guardian Angel technically detaches you from your destination target. So you can curve away from the target if you want to. And actually if Sub, can you jump? Thank you. So can somebody come right here and stand right here? Teammate, thank you. So something you can do as well with that curving after you've detached from your target is fly to them and detach and immediately fly deep into cover because you're curving with your Guardian Angel to instantly be in cover. So it's something to keep in mind. So if you watch this, like I'm already just like, I'm not going to land here and then walk into cover. You can just swoop directly into cover really quickly. And it is a super useful thing to keep in mind. Again, that ties into you should pretty much always be GA boosting. Either GA boosting, GA slingshotting, etc. You should always be utilizing one of them. I hope that answered your question.
Right beside you.
Next question.
I have one. I recently was told that damage boost has a delayed effect or stays on the target you're damage boosting for a moment after you stop damage boosting. So they told me to, if I heal and damage boost a bit and heal damage boost a bit, sorry about the cat, the damage boost would linger a bit while I start healing.
So I've known about this for a very long time, but it's actually something I have not confirmed. There's a lot of little things that I would otherwise teach people if I had it confirmed. That's not on that list of things I know for a fact are true. And in my experience, all that is doing is just boosting your stats for offensive and defensive assists. I don't believe it actually does much, and it's kind of actually a dirty trick a lot of people used in Season 4 to boost their SR because performance-based SR was screwed up for Mercy. And so you gain a lot of SR by doing that. So other than like when performance-based SR was in the game, there was really no reason to do that. And I believe that it also discourages proper play and discourages learning when you should be doing it on your own, regardless of actually learning when you should be damage boosting or healing. I think it hinders your progress of learning overall.
Well, thank you. I was just wondering if you kind of had the confirm or not on that. I've been playing Mercy since the start of the game, and then kind of never knew.
Yeah, I definitely know why you're curious. I personally have only noticed it in the cases where if somebody does damage, and they damage a target, and then they secure the kill on the target, it'll look like you're in the kill feed and you assisted the kill, but that's because you assisted damage to the kill via damage boost at some point in the damage that they received. That doesn't necessarily mean you helped and damage boosted the final blow of that kill.
Yeah,
so that's the only point I've noticed that, sorry.
No, you're okay. I'm on the same stance. I haven't seen anything concrete about that actually happening, and I tend to just damage boost when you see damage going out, and knowing that you can secure a kill and heal when you need to heal. But it's all about personal preference, but I don't... I do the same thing as Evie in this case.
Okay.
Next question? Unless you have anything else to add, Nicole?
I don't have anything.
Okay, next question, guys? Do we have any questions from the stream? I don't know if anybody has it open. I can't look at it right now.
I've had chat open. There's currently no questions. Okay.
Well, if that's the case, I guess that's the end of the Mercy class. Unless...
Yeah, that should be. Sounds like everybody's covered everything. So.
Heroes never die.
Thank you guys for joining.
Thank you very much. That was great.
Thank you so much. It was really helpful.
Yeah, very helpful.
Heroes never die.
The closing bit, if people non-invoc want to come over here. hop to the tree. Okay, that just... Someone stop pushing me! Hop up the tree, and then glide around.
Helden sterben nicht. Heroes never die. Ich bin
Sneaky.
Also sneaky, by the way.
That's pretty good if you're about to be like staggered.
Yep, but
On
it's
the
very
fence.
it's very rarely used. I've only properly used it in competitive 3 times, even though I've known about it since early season 1.
Yeah, normally you're kind of really too hard focused to get away with something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know as a tank, I'm like, oh yay, Mercy, time to jump on her.
Dwarven, yeah, yeah.
My inner
Don't ask the
Winston.
question out,
Yes,
absolutely.
So many Mercy.
I was thinking, I guess I have like 2 more little things that might be a nice tip if you don't mind.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
Because I was thinking, like, one thing that when you were talking about like GA settings and stuff, like I really agree that it comes down to preference. But one small thing that I wanted to note is that if you have GA prefers beam target on, and you want to resurrect during Valk, you won't be able to use the beams while flying to your target because you have to disconnect them, which during Valk can be really impactful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
As well as nearing, like if you Valked during a team fight and the fight is clearly won and you're not, and like you have a tank at half health, don't continue healing him during Valk because that can be ult charge for after your Valk is over. And tell them that.
This is also true.
That's just like kind of something I wanted to note.
Good stuff.
Yep.
If someone wants to come and find me, by the way.
Yeah, I actually have one more thing for you, Evie. Because Winston's damage is equals to Mercy's healing, what I picked up from really high level tank players is to put in and out of
Heroes
punches
never die.
to actually get damage through her healing. And I was wondering if, as a Mercy player, you noticed people doing that, or if there's a way to protect against that. Because I know a lot of Winstons will use their jump cooldown to land on you, then punch, and then start shooting. And with the shooting, it won't undo all the damage from like the melee because it's burst. And it should normally, on top of his damage personally, go through her healing, I think.
Yep. On a 150 or 200 HP target, yes, that usually works. Notably, I've only noticed a handful of Winstons do this consistently. I would say XQC and Tryhard are the 2 notable ones off the top of my memory.
Yeah, I
are
picked
the
it up from
actual-
XQC.
It's definitely something to keep in mind as Mercy to know when a target might potentially die if the Winston knows that. Sometimes because the equalizing amount of health happens, and say if they're like below 40 HP, I know that that person could probably just die. And so that sometimes I heal them so it's even amount until the Winston, I think the Winston might punch, and then by that time that person that is being healed by me might have done enough damage to the Winston for me to then damage boost that person to hopefully secure the kill on Winston before the 40 HP or ish depletes, for example.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different things that you can do, but most of the time it's potentially a lost cause.
Okay, I didn't know like if there was much you could actually do against it, because I've used it to abuse a lot of people on like the lower-ish level of masters.
Yeah, it's definitely something very good for Winston players to learn.
Thank you.
We do have 2 questions from stream. So, Utopian Star says, I am a ranked where my teammates regularly take more damage than they secure kills. So I don't have enough time to damage boost because I'm constantly healing. Is that okay?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're doing something as Mercy and trying to learn and what you can potentially do better, as long as you're always pretty much of that mindset, you're fine. It's the times where you're not doing anything is where it's less ideal. So as long as you're healing at your rank and keeping people alive, is you're still doing your job. Now, sometimes in that elo, something powerful you can do is pay attention to who is shooting who from both sides. Sometimes just looking at like, oh hey, jeez. Sometimes looking at, oh hey, this person off to the side is trying to shoot at this person. Maybe quickly damage boosting them might allow them to secure the kill because they've been at it for a while, and paying attention to that is very often beneficial. I mean, I guess something to keep in mind as well, just a personal note. I have been at lower elos plenty of times. I started off at 2600, so I definitely know, as well as a couple top 500 challenges. So it never think you don't have an impact on the match. You can pretty much always do something as Mercy to give your team an advantage. And so keeping that in mind is really good for you to potentially always think about what you can do better as Mercy, rather than always blaming your teammates. You can blame your teammates while still thinking about what you could have been doing better as well. You can pretty much always be doing something better.
Yeah, and one thing I would add too is it also depends on the team composition. Sometimes, especially lately, you have like triple DPS and a tank. So if you're solo healing, that's very understandable. Of like you don't have time to damage. You're trying to keep everybody alive, and then you also have to do, based on that, the mindset of going into the game. When you know you're solo healing, you have to keep yourself alive, even if that means you can't kind of press out to try and help somebody. Like, let's say you have a Roadhog going past the Reinhardt shield, and if you want to take cover and you can't quite reach him, it might be more beneficial for you to stay behind, because you're not going to get any heals from behind you. Second question is by Dwarven Crafts. This is more of an inquiry about the actual game mechanics. So if you heal/boost a person while on Valk, and someone else enters the range of the beam, it doesn't actually attach to them, even if they're clearly next to the person you're healing. Why is that?
I'm just gonna be blunt. I've literally never seen that in my life.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I haven't seen it either personally. Because usually you can see the beam latch on when they come in, and then it also latches off as they go out. It's the same for your beam normally, just more of them. So I haven't seen it either.
I guess we could try it. But
heroes never die.
Somebody want to come in? Yeah, it latched on to Britum when you came in.
Yeah, it latched on to me when I walked in.
Yeah. So I personally haven't seen it either. Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that as well. But those are the two questions we got from our stream. And in terms of stream, we're also, if you guys can't get your questions in now or later on, you're like, oh, I have a question, I forgot about it, you know, it comes up later. We're also going to be teaching at 7 EDT. So just remember those questions and put them in stream, and we'll answer them later today as well. So.
All right, well, I think that wraps things up, guys. Yeah. Thank you again so much for hosting that, and thank you everybody for joining us.
Yep.
Yay.
Thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ellie.
Have a good day, everyone.
Yeah.
Have fun this evening, class.
Bye.
Bye.